Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast with myself, Andrew Musgrove, and our Newcastle United editor, Aaron Stokes, bringing you a special episode with the help of some well-known Newcastle United fans who've kindly offered their time to help with our end-of-season survey, the Big Newcastle United Forum. It will close later this month, and so far more than 8,000 of you have taken part, so thank you to everyone who has done. And it's all about how you're feeling about the club, how you felt about last season and what you'd like to see this summer and beyond. And a big special thanks to our guests tonight, Kendall Rowan, Adam Pearson, Pete Davey from Loaded Mag NUFC, and Sam Mulliner from Newcastle Fans TV. Thank you guys for popping on. Are we all well? I've asked you all one question at the same time. Just nod in agreement that you're all well. I trust you are. That's what we like. We're going to come to you guys across on our YouTube channel and our podcast channel. And although we're not live, we will be reading every comment from you guys, so please do get in touch. And if you are on the podcast channel, thank you as always for tuning in. So let's get started. I'm going to come to you first, Kendall, and then we'll go around. Can you sum up the season very briefly? How were you feeling? How were you expecting? And just, I mean, Newcastle top four to cup final. I don't think anyone was expecting that.
Yeah, definitely not. I think I probably ran out of superlatives at this point to express the season, positive ones. Unexpected, unbelievable. But I think the one that sticks out for me the most is enjoyable. Like, this is probably the first season that I've thoroughly enjoyed from start to finish, maybe in a sadistic sort of way, for the cup finals and the push for Champions League. But I've genuinely thoroughly enjoyed every minute, and it's been, really, really good, really positive season, and just, for what the future is going to hold, it's just been, really, really good and really positive for once.
For you, Pete, are you still pinching yourself the fact Newcastle got Champions League football?
Yeah, a little bit. I can't lie. I had us down finishing anywhere between 10th and 8th at the beginning of the season. So for us to do what we did this season with the squad that we've got, and the way in which we did it, with the beatings that we gave some teams this season, it was one of the most enjoyable seasons I've had watching Newcastle in the last 30 years. So, yeah, outstanding.
I'm going to come to you next, Sam, and I'm going to get in before you remind everyone that I predicted Newcastle to finish anywhere between 11th and 13th and said that would have been progress. I'm well aware that's what I said. So before you say that, yes, okay. How was the season for you?
I wasn't going to bring it up. It's been good. It's been a lot of fun. So many moments this year of, were you there? Were you there when we did this? Were you there when on this away day? Were you there? It's just been so much fun and just such a welcome change of pace from going to St. James's just out of duty. And it's just been, as I say, so much fun, and long may it continue. This is only the beginning, first full season post takeover, and look what we've achieved already. We've got so much more to look forward to, and not to mention a little Champions League campaign next season. So it's been great fun.
It certainly has. And for you, Adam, how would you sum up the season just gone?
Well, it's been incredible, just like everyone else has said. I think the thing for me as well was last summer looking at this point now, going into next season, I was thinking at the time, well, you know what, Newcastle are comfortably stated had a great second half of the season once Eddie Howe's came in. I think everyone was ambitious, but I don't think there was any real expectation for Newcastle to push on for top 6, never mind top 4 in the first season since the takeover. So I think for me, I had us around mid-table again, and the fact that Newcastle were doing so well at the start, I think about 10, 12 games into the season, so I kind of looked at it, you know what, I think we can do something here. And we kept pushing on. We got to a cup final and we got top 4. It's just incredible. I still can't quite believe it. I think once I see the Champions League group stage all of a sudden pop up, I think I might start believing a little bit more then. But it's been incredible. It's been so good. And I think we've got real ambition now going into next season.
Yeah, I don't think we could have summed it up any better. But I mean, the feeling of surprise and, again, like just having to pinch yourself at how far Newcastle have come in such a short space of time is something that I think we're all feeling, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think, the guys have summed it up perfectly. You, at the start of the season, said, anything from a mid-table finish upwards was progress, and I don't think anybody expected such a rapid rise, especially the ownership. I think their motto was slow and steady and now all of a sudden they've had to maybe fast forward some of their plans. But yeah, certainly a very good start to what is a brand new era.
Yeah, most certainly. Now, there are 16 questions on this survey. We're not going to ask the guys to answer all of them. We're just going to get them to answer kind of the key questions. I'll put the link to the survey into the podcast description and the YouTube description. So if you guys are watching and listening, please do take part. It will close, I think, on Friday. And it just gives us a good chance to really get a collective feeling towards the club. We're going to start with what I think everyone will want to talk about, although some might be sick of talking about it already, and that is transfers. And I'm going to come to you, Kendall, on this one. How much do Newcastle United need to spend this summer, and which position do you think needs to be strengthened as a priority?
I think there's a couple of positions that we need to strengthen, to be honest, and that's not because I think the players aren't good enough. It's not because I don't think that team could take us into next season, because I do. It's just we've got so much pressure on us next season, obviously with the extra games that we wouldn't have necessarily had this season with Champions League and things like that. And they're very high intensity games. You are playing the best opposition in Europe. So there is going to be a lot of different kind of level of games next season, because the Premier League is intense, it is physical, it is a fast-paced league, but the Champions League, you've got to have so many kind of different tactics and different systems going across all of those games. So yeah, I think there'll be a couple of ones that I think we need to strengthen in. I think obviously we are really in need of a left back, really a traditional left back, let me put it like that, because Dan Burns done a fantastic job this season, and I really like Matt Targett. But I think we probably just need one that can just slot into that position immediately, who is comfortable there, who is of really, really good quality. So obviously the links have been there with the likes of Tierney and stuff, but I haven't seen anything further for a fullback as of yet. I think another midfielder would be amazing, attacker midfielder if possible. Obviously the likes of being linked to Maddison and Szoboszlai, who can kind of play a couple of positions, winger as well, and probably another centre-back just to kind of, because Kieran Clark's obviously on the way out. So yeah, just another centre-back who can, again, slot into games where we might need a rest in between Champions League games of, Sven Botman's age and quality. So that would be probably the four positions that I would say. But again, across the team, we needed just a little bit more depth just to cope with like injuries and the physicality and just the pressure of the amount of games that we'll have next season.
I guess, Peter, some of the names that Kendall's mentioned there, that leads into the budget question, because everyone wants to know how much Newcastle United have got to spend. You've got financial fair play playing away in the background as well. I mean, if you just take two of those names, or at least if you just take Maddison, for example, I mean, he's going to probably cost you somewhere between 45 and 50 million. So we're already looking at potentially a quarter of the budget, perhaps. It's going to be really interesting to see how they handle the balance.
Definitely. I have to say, the one thing that the owners have maintained throughout is that they are very fluid. And if they see a deal, they'll get it done. So I'm being perfectly honest with you. I don't really keep too much to tight budgets and like specific numbers. I think if Newcastle see a player, it's the right deal at the right time, they'll do it. I think Alexander Isak was the perfect example of that last summer. So, I mean, if you're asking me what I think Newcastle will spend this summer, I think it'd probably be more towards the 150 mark. 150, 170. That's my opinion. And that's not even including January, which I think they'll go again as well. So that's my opinion with regards to that. If I'm asked on a player, look, I'm a huge Maddison fan. I am, being based in Leicester anyway. Talking about Maddison, they love him down here. They absolutely do. And he is a terrific player that would massively improve us. Some people say, is 45 million too much? Not for me, because if he had 2 or 3 years left on his contract, he'd be worth a hell of a lot more. And that's how important he could be as a signing. So he'd definitely be one that I'd get in. But like Kendall said, there's a number of other positions that have been mentioned that need to be upgraded. And I think it's all part of the evolution of the club. Not because, like Kendall said, they're bad players. It's just that we always need to improve. We always need to keep moving forward. And, unfortunately, some players are getting older and need to be transitioned out the team. So I fully expect that to happen.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because James Maddison is the top target, but maybe his position isn't necessarily the priority. You know, Kendall and Peter both mentioned their thoughts on that. I mean, for me, I think a defensive midfielder is absolutely key. Adam, what about you? Which position do you think Newcastle need to strengthen as a priority?
Well, I do think a defensive midfielder is definitely one. I think midfield options was something that the last few games of the season kind of did pop up quite a bit because, well, Newcastle had sought John Joe Shelby on deadline day and we didn't replace him. And towards the last couple of games or so, Joe Willock got injured, then Joe Linton got injured, and all of a sudden out of nowhere you're losing all these midfielders. So I think if Newcastle was to have another 3 or 4 games towards the end of the season, I think we could have been in massive trouble. But thankfully, I think we did dodge a little bit of the budget there regarding injuries. But I think we definitely do medium midfield. That's one. I think there's a bit of a goalkeeper crisis as well, I would argue, because, well, Martin de Braga, I personally think, will leave Newcastle. Karius has been offered a new contract, he hasn't accepted it, and we don't know what's going to happen with him. So I think it's a case that Newcastle does need to invest in quite a few different areas of the pitch. And just what like so Kendall and Peter already said, left back I think is definitely one. Out wide players I think is one. I think striker's also one that people haven't talked about too much because, well, all it takes is the likes of Callum Wilson, who I would class as an injury-prone player. Let's say he picks up an injury at the start of the season, you got Isak playing 40-plus games by himself for the rest of the year. So I do think there's a lot of areas we have to invest in. Probably about 6 players I honestly think we need. I think we need a lot of players around the park just for the case of squad depth. The last thing we need is to pick up some bad injuries and all of a sudden our season could completely be thrown out the window in a matter of games.
Yeah, I do agree with you on the striker, and I'll pick that up in a moment. But Pete's going to have to get off in a second for his own show on Loaded Mag and UFC. So I'll just ask you a question that I'm going to ask Sam later in the show. If you could pick one opposition to play in the Champions League, guaranteed home and away, who are you going for?
For me, it has to be PSG. I think it's going to raise so many talking points with PSG, with the Qatar, Saudi up against each other in the Champions League. It'll be the most talked about moment in the Champions League, certainly in the group stages if we got them. And yeah, I do think, you know, Kylian Mbappe coming to St James's Park potentially would be an amazing occasion for Newcastle fans to see a player of his caliber come to St James's Park, but equally to test ourselves against some of the best in Europe, former finalists, winners of La Liga Ligue 1 on a regular basis. It's what as Newcastle United fans have wanted. So for me, they're the team that I'd go for.
Can't wait to see Paul Dummett just snap Mbappe in two with a gorgeous slide tackle.
That'd be quite the sight, wouldn't it? Thank you very much, Pete, for sparing your time. I hope the show goes well on your channel. Kendall mentions a left back, and off camera, Sam, before we started, you were talking to Aaron about his story today on Chronicle Live. So I'll let Aaron take away the mic there.
Yeah, so obviously today on Chronicle Live, we've had a story that Newcastle are still interested in Anthony Robertson from Fulham, the 25-year-old. Kendall's obviously mentioned, Sam, that a left back is one of her priorities. Do you think that's a position they need to be going for, even though Dan Burns had a very good season, or would you like to see the money spent elsewhere?
Well, I think the bulk of the money will be spent in midfield, but I actually think left back is probably going to be your hardest position to recruit this summer. One of the main reasons that I said this time last year I wouldn't have signed Target on a permanent, because here we are a year later looking for another left back, because Burns done a great job there, but he's not a natural left back, as we know. You think of the real class left backs around Europe, they're all pretty settled in their club, and some are unrealistic. So you've got to look elsewhere, unless Dan Ashworth has a gem of a unearthed talent somewhere in the far realms of the world. Then that would be lovely. But Anthony Robinson's not a bad option. I don't think he'd excite many. But again, I think left back's a really, really tricky area to recruit this summer.
And obviously, we've spoken a lot about where needs to be strengthened and, you know, how much needs to be spent. One of the other questions on the survey is, who would people's ideal transfer target be? Now, on the survey, we've given fans 5 options. We've given them Declan Rice, James Maddison, Moussa Diaby, Dominic Szoboszlai and Harvey Barnes, all of which would probably take up quite a chunky bit of the budget. We'll start with you, Kendall. Out of those 5 names listed, who would you like to see most come to Newcastle this summer?
Not that I think it's going to be the most realistic, because I doubt it, but Declan Rice is 100%. He's my number one. literally kill for Declan Rice to be at this club. I said I went off to every home game this season. I've been going to home games since 2006, and he's one of the only players that doesn't play for a big six side that I have seen dictate the tempo in most games that he plays. Like, he just controls everything. Every ball goes through him. He's just, honestly, he's a class above. And when everyone was saying, I wouldn't pay 80 million for Declan Rice, I would. Like, I honestly think he's genuinely that good. So yeah, but obviously it looks like he's pretty heavily nailed on going Arsenal at this stage. But yeah, Declan Rice, out of those, would be my picks. Again, he can play like an 8, he can play as a 6, which he has done in the past. So yeah, he's I'll rate Declan Rice very highly.
I will say we did put these questions together about 2 or 3 weeks ago, long before the Rice to Arsenal links came about. Maybe we should have taken them out for this thing. But in terms of the other 4 players on the list, Adam, James Maddison, Moussa Diaby, Dominic Szoboszlai, Harvey Barnes. Out of those 4, which one would take your fancy?
Well, I know Maddison, Harvey Barnes, also 2 that's going to pop up. I would take both of them at Newcastle. I think despite the fact they've been playing at a poor Leicester side last season, I still think they've done a great job. Dominic Szoboszlai is one I quite like as well, actually. Someone that's been popping up now and again. Someone that I think Newcastle definitely need. I think the out wide options, especially this season, we just hadn't really had the dedicated goals. Because I know Almiron scored 12 goals, but even then he was injured for a period and he came back. He wasn't scoring as much as someone that I'm still not overly keen on, to be brutally honest. And as for the all-white players, St. Maximin, of course, we're not too certain what's going to happen to him just yet. Anthony Gordon hasn't really kicked on. Murphy's had a great season, but again, probably isn't scoring as many as he potentially would want from a player. But honestly, I think out wide is probably the players I would want to see the most in. And of course, he picked Harvey Barnes and Szoboszlai on there. So I would have to go with Dominic Szoboszlai. Out of the 2, I had to pick one. But again, no, I'm expecting Newcastle to bring somebody good in, and hopefully it'll be someone like him. I know you mentioned Diaby as well, but that one's been a bit quiet. I haven't heard too much about him, to be honest.
And Sam, you obviously wanted Alexander Isak at the club long before they signed him. You've let us all know every time you've came on this podcast. If Newcastle were going to go and break their record again, who would you want to see come in?
Oh, to break the record again. I don't think that'll happen somehow. I don't think Diaby or Rice will happen for budgetary reasons. Szoboszlai out of them, Maddison I can take or leave. He doesn't do a great deal for me. He's fine. I'd be happy if we signed him. If we didn't sign him, I wouldn't be bothered. Same with Harvey Barnes. Szoboszlai out of them would excite me the most. I think we'll be spending the biggest chunk of the money in midfield, as I say, and we'll be getting 2. So Szoboszlai and Sandro Tonali of AC Milan would be my 2 this summer.
What about Tyler Adams? Would anyone take Tyler Adams? Look at that blank face.
Doesn't move me.
You
Doesn't
just
move me one
after
bit.
bites. We had me and Andrew had a text argument about this the other week. I don't want him at all. It does nothing for me either, Kendall.
Does the quiet work? Does the dirty work that doesn't get noticed? Sit in that little in the hole and just allow Bruno and the others to kind of flourish. Nope, not selling it.
No.
Okay. Are there any other names that we haven't spoken about, Adam, that you would like to see come in, realistic targets that aren't on that list that we've just mentioned or on Tyler Adams?
Ooh, off the top of my head, I don't think there was, to be honest, because I haven't really been thinking about it so much. I think out of the relegated players, again, I think Maddison and Barnes probably are the 2 going to mention the most. There's not really any particular names. Obviously, Barella is the one that's popped up last week. That was really exciting me, to be honest. But that one's all of a sudden kind of fizzled out a bit. But I think that one, once I first originally saw the news about that one, made me really good. I was very excited about that one. So a player of his caliber would be amazing. I don't know if it's probably realistic at the minute to get some of these players. And I think it probably is somewhat for depending on who you're getting. But ultimately, it's probably a case where Newcastle still need to be a little bit grounded going into this season, and we'll try again next summer. But Barella was probably the one, to be honest, that I was most excited about.
I guess kind of, even if Newcastle don't sign Barella, the fact that there is genuine interest in that player and they look like they've at least picked up the phone to inquire. Newcastle United are being ambitious and they're forward thinking and they've got plans. We're not in the scenario where we were under Mike Ashley, where they were getting the helicopter out on deadline day and trying to sign Fulham's second best striker for God knows how much money. There is a plan and they are putting it into place. And if they don't get people off the A list, it'll be B or C, but they'll still be quality players. And that must be exciting as a fan.
Yeah, 100%. Like 2 years ago, we were literally most fans were hung up over the fact that we couldn't pay a loan fee for Hamza Chowdhury. Like, where even is he now? Do you know what I mean? So you've just got to look at how far you've come, and like that's just Hamza Chowdhury. 2 years later, you've got Barella. Do you know what I mean? Like, no disrespect to Hamza Chowdhury, I'm sure he's a lovely man. But yeah, in terms of playing wise, he's just not quite on the level of Barella. So yeah, it's just we're acting like a big club, and that is just all that I wanted, because a lot of people will look down on us, and obviously we haven't had any kind of major trophy success, because obviously we have had trophies. We've had like 2 championships, you know what I mean? But if you want to call it that, in a total cup. But yeah, people can't look down on us, and obviously everyone's saying, oh, the caliber of Champions League gone proper downhill this year because of Newcastle being in it, and like I just think it's rude. So the fact that we are acting like a big club and we are approaching this caliber of players who are some of the best in the world, then we've even got some of the best in the world currently in our squad right now. So yeah, to do that from the off, I think is incredible. My head's fell off basically at some of the players that we've been linked to, because I just would never have imagined it. But I've got to start acting like not having imposter syndrome now, because we are there. We are a big club. We are going to be successful, hopefully, in the future. So yeah, it's nice to be linked with sort of players like that.
And I guess the other thing, Sam, that rolls into that is the fact that there's trust between the fan base and the ownership, that the fans fully believe in what the owners are doing. And if you look at the transfer windows gone by, they've proven that for the majority of signings, and maybe all of the signings players have signed so far, they do get it right. And that will give fans even more confidence that this summer will end positively with players coming across the line that can improve the squad.
Yeah, there's no, as Kendall said, there's no frustration anymore within the fan base that we can't pay loan fees, or, although we've missed out on Hosselu, we can't bring him back now. He's gone to Real Madrid. We've lost out there. That's a shame. But yeah, there is a trust there, and we've got people within the football club, running the football club, football people that know what they're doing. Dan Ashworth has an encyclopedia of scouting knowledge from not just Europe, from around the world. So there is a lot of trust there, and we've seen that with the players they've brought in. Bruno, Botman, just Isaac. Wow, what a spine of the team that could be for the next 10 years.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's it. The players they've got in are relatively young as well, so they can only get better. We're going to go on to the next question now.
Yeah, so just moving away from transfers slightly, we've also asked fans to give us their thoughts on what the owners' priority should be away from the field. So we know that they've strengthened on the pitch, but they're also making a lot of moves off it. So the options that we've got for fans is, should the owners be prioritising expanding St James's Park, cleaning up St James's Park, building a brand new training ground, strengthening the women's team, or strengthening the academy? Adam, out of those options, what do you think the priority should be for Staveley, Murdard and Ruben?
Well, I think the most important one short term for Newcastle would be the expansion James's Park. Now, we all know that's going to take quite a while due to the fact that we still have to get the permits, so we don't know exactly what part of Gallagher will expand. I mean, long term, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare, but that's definitely the big one, because you've seen the demand for tickets at the minute. Everyone wants to go to the games, and when Newcastle can't allow people to go to matches due to how many season tickets have been sold, it's just a case where the club is missing out on match day revenue. Now, as for the other aspects, for example, the likes of the Women's Academy, I mean, that will be getting advanced at the minute. I know when Newcastle United's women's team, out of the 26 players we had last season, 10 of them will win. So it'll be a case now, I'll be signing loads of players from the Championship, the League above us, that will come in and hopefully get us promoted straight away. So those two will be happening behind the scenes. But as for the other ones, I think the training ground, I mean, we've already improved our current training ground a bit. I know it's a bit of a dump, to be honest, but at least we've improved it a bit. I think that probably won't be something that I think would honestly take place to still in our 6, 7, 8 years. I think it's a case where that one it is going to be long in the distance. But I think for now, your St James's Park stuff, cleaning up the ground and actually trying to expand the ground, I think should be the major priority for Newcastle.
I guess the refreshing thing again, Kendall, from that, a little bit like to the answer to the last question in many ways, is that out of all them options, stadium expansion aside, although they are talking to architects and what have you, and they're doing everything in that list to a certain degree, which is, again, really refreshing, because they've come in and they've seen the issues with the stadium, whether it is a lick of paint or, as we say, trying to add more seats. They've come in, they've improved the training ground, they've invested in the women's side, invested in the academy. We're sitting here saying, what is the priority? but it's refreshing to be sitting here saying, well, actually, they've done little bits in every single category.
Yeah, the fact is we don't have to pick and choose anymore. Like before, it was like you get a new player or you get some better paddling pools at the training ground. Know what I mean? Now it's like, oh, we've actually got hydrotherapy pools, or we've actually got stuff going on at the training ground that's like that we should have at this stage as a Premier League club, that we should have had a long time ago. And the fact that they are doing bits at a time, and they're like, it's almost tempering expectations as well. Similarly to how they do with the transfers, they don't come out and say, right, we're going to have a massive summer, because they don't want to do that. They just want to build gradually, and we have done that. We've spent very smartly across the board on infrastructure and on the team. So yeah, I think obviously academy, especially if we're gonna have European competition, hopefully for a consistent number of years now, homegrown and club trained players is a massive thing. I think in the Champions League you've got to have like 8 or so of like homegrown and club trained. So it's going to have to be, we're going to have to take time and focus on that, because we can't keep obviously not having players come through. We've only had a handful of players come through the academy in the latter years. So like Sean Longstaff and obviously Matty Longstaff, who sadly is going to be leaving us anyway, Elliot Anderson, players like that, Lewis Miley's obviously coming through now. So yeah, we aren't as advanced as other teams around us. Like look at Man City, for example. I know they'll have had obviously a lot of investment, but their academy players like Lavia, for example, this season, who was in their academy, was at Man City, at Southampton now. He's going to go for about 40 million this summer, and he's still 19. So we've just got to like kind of get up to the pace of stuff like that at the minute. But yeah, I think they're going to have a lot to do. But it'd be nice to see there's some changes coming to St James's Park anyway in the new season with the digital ticketing and things like that. So it'll be really nice to see if they've changed anything on the concourses and in the stadium up till then. But it's nice to actually not have to pick and choose what to spend money on. We can actually do it all, which is really, really nice to see, to be fair.
And Sam, yourself and Adam have obviously spent a lot of time this season just gone following the women's team. You've seen how much Amanda Staveley and Murdard have really put a lot of time and effort as well as finances into it. How good has that been to have seen, and whereabouts does that rank on your sort of list of priorities to make sure that it's not just a flash in the pan?
Yeah, I don't think it will be a flash in the pan, because they're not here to muck around anymore. The women's team being incorporated back into the club as opposed to the foundation was huge. Proper contracts being handed out as well. As Adam touched upon, there's been a lot of departures this summer from the women's team. Some big players leaving as well, like Beth Guy and Freya Bales, who have been really important players last season for the women. So that's it's going to be a really interesting transfer window for them too before the new season starts. But like most of the things on that list are being done, aren't they? It's great. I mean, the only time Twitter has broken because of window cleaning was because of St James's Park. So they do need to sort out an expansion, because we could obviously fill 70,000 without even trying, especially on Champions League nights this season. But everything else is being done. Look at the academy improvements. Look at the people, just the staff we've hired already in the academy. Massive. And the training ground doesn't look a dump anymore. It was a barn conversion. It hadn't been properly done up since the days of Sir Bobby, and now all of a sudden it looks professional. So the only thing publicly that we're not aware of something really doing is expanding the stadium, but I'm sure they're having discussions in the background.
Yeah, I think Adam touched on it, kind of the complications with doing that. But you mentioned there, Sir Bobby Robson and the training ground. I suppose for fans, it's really nice, Adam, to see owners taking pride in the stadium and in the training ground. I'm sure everyone will remember the video that goes around of Sir Bobby Robson with Gary Lineker when he's just talking about the doors and how good the doors are. And in a way, that's what Newcastle United have got back, that all the small elements are covered, and you have people in place who just want to make sure every single part of this club can be the very best that it deserves to be.
Well, I think it's just a sense of pride. If anything, for Newcastle fans over the last 15 years or so, you just watch crap on the pitch, everything behind the scenes. It's not treated equally. Newcastle are just miles behind on everything. You just think, oh, what's going on here? It's been one of them ones where I think Mike Ashley's missed out on loads at Newcastle. I mean, he hasn't actually gold mine in his hands. He doesn't take any time whatsoever. And I think now, even though, yes, he got 300 million for the club, he probably will be kicking himself a bit because he's had all that opportunity there, but he hasn't taken it. Oh, he's squandered it in Newcastle. Now we're probably on a place where we should have been all these years ago, but it's been an incredible time. I just think for everything at the football club's going well. I mean, I've heard actually horror stories about the women's team, for example, just how bad things have actually been on the Mike Ashley days, and I think just reflecting on it now and just seeing how well things have been since the takeover, it's incredible. Here's a sense of pride, it's just enjoyment, everything going on at the football club, even like middle school things. Obviously, I don't think there'd be many fan bases out there be banging about the new kit. I wouldn't be enjoying that. I wouldn't be enjoying the Champions League budget on it. It's just been mental, and I think the fans have just been so used to just watching and seeing crap that there's anything that pops out now that is anything good is just someone that Newcastle fans have gravitated towards. It's just been crazy.
Yeah, I think everyone who watches Adam's content will know he's been to the club shop. Was it today, Adam? And they had, what, 78 shirts left for sale?
No. Oh, there's not many now. But there was 78 when I counted them in the video. 4 left is probably 60. So I ended up buying shirts at the end. So this is my Premier League one here, and the ones in my bag down here, the Champions League ones as well. As that I go in and get a few of them sorted. But it wasn't that busy today, but there's still a lot of people in there, and I think the club probably has run out of shirts now. If not, it'll be tomorrow morning.
And just on the new show, so it's got the sponsor on there, Kendall Seller. Now, we did have sponsorship written down in this list. Obviously, we've scratched it off, but the fact that they're now starting to get paid in the region of what other clubs, other Premier League clubs are used to getting paid when it comes to sponsors is another big thing, because these owners came in, and I don't think it was much of a surprise that they found Newcastle were totally lagging behind when it comes to commercial revenue.
Yeah, we were lagging behind it in everything, commercial revenue, in the kind of hierarchy and the structure at the club, infrastructure, women's team, like everything was just lagging behind, to be fair. So, yeah, as you say, it doesn't surprise me at all that they came in. That was one of the first things they identified. And I think a lot of people, there's been obviously uproar about the sponsor, which is just ridiculous because no one cared when we had sponsors around the ground for free, for minimal cost previously. So no one was bothered about that. And I think what everyone doesn't understand is we actually are we're a lot higher than we were, but we're still actually significantly lower than a lot of clubs that have been in the Champions League in recent years. So even though it is good investment for us, it's still like a little way below what other people, other clubs get at this level. So we've still got a little bit of a way to go, but it's mega investment and it's really good. And it's just, strengthening the relationships with kind of that region and getting a more global fan base. And yeah, it's just really, really good that there's so many things that have been identified and actually being done about, like there's something being done about it. And we know now that if there is ever a problem or there is something that needs to be changed at the club, it will be sorted. So yeah, it's nice to know that, really.
And it's very good to see that Seller obviously committed to making a fan zone outside St James's Park. I think that'll be a really, really good move for them. Now, that takes us nicely on to the next question. Now, I suspect that all three of you are going to have very similar answers here, so we can probably whiz through it. Now, the next question was, would you like to see Newcastle expand their ground or move to a new one entirely? Sam, we'll start with you.
As a general rule of thumb, I hate new stadiums. I think they're soulless and just there's no character about them. I would hate for us to move. I really would. There's definite scope to expand St James's to 70,000, and I think it's going to be difficult. But we can afford the best architects the world has to offer. So I'm sure that where there's a will, there's a way. I don't like new grounds at all. West Ham's ground is not a football ground at all. It's an arena without a roof. Tottenham's is impressive, but does it have anything really about it? It's okay. The Emirates is weird. That's just, I don't know. It's just the old the away days. My favourite away days this season have been at grounds that are like old school grounds, Forest and Everton. And all right, we won at them, but they're proper footballing stadiums and. I don't know, just like grounds like Southampton and Leicester, they're exactly the same, except one seats are blue and the others are red. They're exactly the same stadium otherwise. There's just no character, whereas St James's Park is just stacks of character. Love it to bits. Don't want to move.
It is, isn't it? And Adam, you know, obviously, like everyone on this panel, we go up to St James's Park on match days, and we've been hundreds, if not thousands, of times throughout our lives. But that feeling of walking up to the ground, I don't know about you, Adam, it never gets old for me. Whether it's rain or shine, doesn't matter who it's against. Even the Mike Ashley, there was still something about walking up to St James's Park. Although under Mike Ashley, once you got into the ground, it was a different story. But there is something special about the cathedral on the hill, isn't it?
Well, yeah, St James's Park is just an incredible place to go to. It's not just the stadium itself, it's also the location of the stadium. It's in the middle of the city centre. I think that stat was about the pub rule, was about 130 pubs or something in a 1 mile radius around the ground. So obviously it's not just huge for us, it's also huge for everyone in the local community, all the businesses. So I think moving the ground is definitely the wrong thing to do. I agree with Sam that I think modern grounds especially just have nothing to them. There's no count. I think the atmosphere has dampened quite a bit as well. Not only that, I think the likes of Tottenham, West Ham, you see it when the first move into new ground, they do underperform in the first couple of seasons or so. So I think it's a bit of an adjustment for them as well. But honestly, I just hate the new ground. I don't rate them at all. And I think Newcastle, you got this stadium here. It will be hard, to be fair, to expand the ground, but it definitely is possible. Otherwise, Newcastle wouldn't have bought the land towards the back of the Gallagher again. It's been class, though. I think Newcastle have got many more years to St James's Park to go, and I don't think we'll have to worry about it as a fan base.
I certainly hope so, because I completely agree with the sentiment. I mean, I've been to West Ham's ground many a times, and it just feels like you're at a concert rather than a football match. When you're in the concourses, it just does not feel right at all. And Kendall, you obviously said before that you've been at home games since 2006. You've seen a lot of bad times, and more recently some good times. I'm guessing you're in agreement as well for the boys that they should stay.
Yeah, 100%. Like, we've just started to, I know people will be like, oh, you can't live in the past, but we've just started to get that feel of our club again that we did used to have. And I don't want to use that like kind of iconic cathedral on the hill, St James's Park. Like, I just don't want to lose that, because it is the heart of our club and it is the heart of our city. And I don't want that to be lost, because as the guys have said, like, new grounds are pretty soulless and there's no history behind them. And I know a lot of West Ham fans really miss Upton Park, and I know a lot of Tottenham fans always mention White Hart Lane, and I think the same will happen with Everton when they obviously inevitably don't play in Goodison anymore. They'll miss it, and I just think I'd rather do what Liverpool are doing. Obviously, at the moment they've extended one of their I don't know if it's the COP, but they've extended one of their stands as well. And I'd just rather do that and keep our history, keep our identity for a little bit longer. I don't want to change the badge. I don't want to change the stadium, whether that's old school or not. It's just, it is what we are as a club, and it is our identity. And I think like building a new stadium would be a little bit lost, and the history would be lost. So yeah, I'm 100% in agreement. I want to keep it for as long as we can.
And Sam, I guess there's a bigger picture here as well. The fact that the owners didn't just come in and go, right, we're moving, because there's definitely areas they could have picked out to build a new stadium. But what they did is they looked at the land, which was owned by another company that had been bought off Mike Ashley. They looked around and they went out and paid the money and got the land. And that itself, I think, will still shock a few Newcastle United fans that actually they've gone out and done that. They didn't have to do that, but they saw the opportunity. They realised the importance of that land and what it could mean for St James's Park, and acted upon it. Yeah,
because these owners know what they've got. Whereas, like Adam made a great point about Mike Ashley before, people used to say, "Oh, but he's a brilliant businessman." Well, he's a terrible businessman. He's absolute thick. Some of the decisions he's made, just playing against what he had, and 300 million was cheap, very, very cheap, and the stadium just looked tatty and tacky. But yeah, that's all in the past now. The new owners do know what they've got, and just to add on to the previous point about atmosphere and stadiums and stuff, you wait till Luton away. I mean, no one will be able to get a ticket because we'll have an away allocation of about 14, but that is a proper old school ground where fans are right on the pitch, and that'll probably be, for the lucky 14 who get an away ticket, that'll probably be the best away day of next season.
We're just on atmosphere. We'll go around. I'll start with you, Kendall. Just tell me your favourite atmosphere from the season just gone at St James's Park.
Oh, that's hard. And there was a good few. Obviously, the semi-final for the Carabao, that was amazing. Even the quarters was good, because obviously Dan Burn and Sean Longstaff, like Geordie boys scoring, like that was just immense. I think Tottenham game at home was just ridiculous. It was just silly. Like, it was just like, we couldn't believe it in 21 minutes. Like, we were 5-0 up. Like, I was just looking at my dad and I was like, and even my dad, this is how pessimistic Newcastle fans are, right? My dad was like, oh, I remember we played QPR away and it was 5-5 or whatever. And I was like, Dad, like, I don't need that negativity in my life right now. I just don't need that. So yeah, I think probably just for just how funny it actually was, and just Jacob Murphy's reactions and Alexander Isak's reactions, it has to be Tottenham. But there's been just some fantastic atmospheres. I can't even, to be honest, there wasn't really any bad ones. Maybe the Carabao Cup final was maybe a little bit flat in Wembley at times, but from everyone really, not just us. So yeah, but the rest of them it's just been immense. But Tottenham probably for me, just for the sheer like audacity of us to do that, and the just how unbelievable it was at the time.
It's interesting you mentioned there what your dad said about, the fear of Newcastle throwing it away. Do you think that feeling as a fan base has gone now? As in,
No.
always thinking Newcastle are going to mess it up? Or is it going to take a few years yet?
Absolutely not. It's definitely still there, 100%. I know it is for me anyway. Like, the only difference is now I actually go to a game and I'm like, oh, we might win today. Like, it's not like every time I go to the game, I'm like, oh, well, we're going to lose. I'm actually like thinking we might win. And even when we're 3-0 up, I'm like, oh, don't like it. We need another goal. We need the next goal here. And I'm still like that. It's just ingrained in us for so long to not be like that team who goes and wins games. You kind of go in not to lose, but the attitude and stuff towards it now is very different. I think it's going to take a little while yet to ingrain that PTSD out of our systems, because I've definitely still got it 100%.
Yeah, I suspect many people listening to this definitely have as well. Adam, for you, what was the best atmosphere at home?
Well, I think the two for me, obviously the big ones, the Southampton semi-final and the Leicester game of the quarter-final for the Champions League. I think those two, never in a million years I would have thought that would have happened as a Newcastle fan, especially in the Mike Ashley days. I never thought Newcastle would play at Wembley. I think that was one big thing I always did. I actually never ever been to Wembley before the cup final. I kind of waited my entire life for that to be the moment when I went there, and I think finally getting that opportunity was amazing. I know things didn't go too well for us in the end, but I think the experience is great for the players. I think it's a good opportunity now to kind of build on it and try and go back there again next season. I think the fact is we as Newcastle fans actually walked out of Wembley disappointed, I think speaks volumes about where we are as a football club now. Let's see, we'll somehow get on the Mike Ashley and we're to lose 2-0 at Manchester. Now, I think most fans would walk away clapping the team off and going, well done lads, we give it a good go. But now it's a case that we can't really build on something. It's no longer a case where we're just so far off getting anywhere near our major honour. I think Newcastle are real close. We're quite literally a few years away, and I'm confident we could actually get some in the next couple of years. But wait and see. I don't want to judge that too much. But no, I think the Southampton Leicester home games are huge for actually getting to where we want to be, a cup final and Champions League qualification, your first season since the takeover. I mean, you can't complain about that, can you?
It's been quite the ride. And for you, Sam?
I found Kendall's point really funny because we had it 5 minutes to go with the second leg against Southampton. We were all terrified, and Southampton needed to score twice just to put it to extra time, but we were still absolutely terrified. The whole stadium was. So yeah, that one. But I mean, look, since I've had children, I'm an emotional so-and-so. So my favourite was when I took my 6-year-old lad for his first game, Wolves at home this season. We were in the East Stand, and his favourite player is Miggy Almiron, who scored the winner in front of us. So that was my little personal atmospheric highlight from the season.
I'm going to say Brighton. I know Adam mentioned the Leicester game there, but those last couple of minutes, I mean, that Nick Pope save, I don't know, I was a wee bit kind of watching with my hands over my eyes. The game before that, though, the Brighton game for me, even though it was very close until right at the end, there was just something about it. I just felt it was the perfect tactical performance from Newcastle, and there was just a really strong atmosphere on the ground. But as you guys have all said, we could sit here and discuss all 19 games in many ways. But for you, Aaron?
Look, I know it's probably the most popular answer, but that semi-final second leg I thought was just absolutely brilliant. The scenes afterwards, Tottenham again was just one of just pure what on earth is going on.
City seems a lifetime ago. I don't know about you guys. That seems.
I was good. No one mentioned it. You know, when the players are doing their like favorite goals of the season and stuff, no one mentioned Maxi against Wolves, and then no one mentioned trips against Man City at home. And I was like, I'm good, but it was because it was so long ago.
It was
We've
such a
had
long
that
time
gap
ago.
in the season, like it kind of got lost a bit. But yeah, I agree. Man City was great as well.
Yeah, it certainly was. As you say, you could probably pick 10 or 15 that I'm sure people would argue
The
over.
Manchester United one, when
Exactly,
it beat
yeah.
2-0. I mean,
So
again, I'm guessing a lot of people have very different answers to that one. The next question, again, I'm going to assume everyone's kind of in agreement with the answer here. I'm going to come to you, Adam. How confident are you that Eddie Howe was the right man to lead Newcastle United to the next level?
Well, I remember when Eddie Howe first got linked, actually, I backed against him because we were linked to Unai Emery before he first came in. I was really pushing towards him. I mean, that was a guy who won 4 Europa Leagues in 7 years. And I'm thinking when that one kind of fizzled away and all of a sudden Eddie Howe's coming into the picture, I was quite harsh towards him, to be honest. Probably a guy that on paper I would have looked at being probably a short-term manager, somebody that probably would have lasted till around this summer, then you would have brought someone better in. But obviously, I don't think anyone's predicted how he would go at Newcastle so far. I mean, it's just been incredible. I think the ethic, the overall work ethic from him has just been incredible. This is a guy that comes in 12 hours every single day at the training ground. And I think the good thing for Eddie Howe as well is the fact that he has replaced who's the complete polar opposite to him, a guy that comes in 3 hours every day. He doesn't run on holiday during international break. I mean, this is the guy who didn't give 100% in Newcastle United. And I think when Eddie Howe's got the chance now to really come in and prove people wrong and actually they have the funds for once. I think Eddie Howe as well. He's been a good manager, but he's never really had the proper budget to work with. So I think the chance at Newcastle to potentially do that was huge for him. An offer he couldn't refuse. He came in, and I mean, the rest is history so far. He's given everything he has, and it shows in the pitch because Newcastle have just been next to nothing in terms of your team. The Premier League have been so good, so consistent as well. May I also say, and down to Eddie Howe, he's got the best out of players that you wouldn't expect. I think the likes of Sean Longstaff, Dan Burn, of course, we just signed last year. I mean, Jacob Murphy, Joe Linton. Now, these are players that never in a million years you would have even questioned to be mentioned Champions League football and them. It's just due to the fact how Eddie Howe's not just done well with the players he's signed, he's also got the best out of his previous players as well. Half of Newcastle's squad's still the team that Steve Bruce had, so it's not really a case that Newcastle's spent all his money and all of a sudden we're buying out the league. It's not that at all. Newcastle was spent well and we've also used what we had, so I think Eddie Howe's done exceptional. I think he probably is a long-term manager unless something was to drastically change with him. But he's been incredible. He's got a huge opportunity in Champions League now. We've only just lost the cup final, so he's got a chance as well to be the man that actually breaks Newcastle's major honour record. So he's got a huge opportunity in front of him now, and I'm sure he can take it.
Adam, I don't think you were alone in wanting Unai Emery. I remember being exactly the same when he got linked, and it did sort of feel a little bit anticlimactic when Howe was the man who actually ended up coming in. Kendall, as somebody who follows Spanish football yourself, did you share that feeling about Emery? And now that we've obviously had 18 months of Eddie Howe, I'm guessing you think he's the man that can take them forward long term?
Yeah, I've brought up my own tweets in the past stuff like 2 years ago where I was like, you know what, give me a manager. Obviously, we still had the previous manager at the time, but I was like, give me a manager. I want Howe in tomorrow. I want Howe in yesterday. Like I was proper catting for Eddie Howe. And then obviously it kind of fell off a bit because he was going to go to Celtic. And then it was like, we weren't linked to them that heavily anymore. And then the Unai Emery thing came, and I am such an Unai Emery fan. Even when he was at Arsenal, I backed him and I defended him quite a lot, considering I'm not an Arsenal fan. It didn't matter to me, but I was defending him quite a lot because there was a lot of really nasty remarks made towards him, and I think he didn't deserve that. And yeah, having followed Spanish football for a long time, he's a really, really good tactical coach. Even just look how well he's done with Aston Villa, man. Like they were 17th and like they've got European football this year. So for me, it just shows how good a manager he is, similar to Eddie Howe. I was really happy with the appointment, but as you say, probably a little bit anticlimactic just because of Unai Emery's experience at a higher level to Eddie Howe. But it wasn't because of, I think, you know, Eddie Howe's not good enough coach, because I do. And as I said, I was very much backing him to come in the first place. So, yeah, but honestly, I don't think anyone could have imagined how well he's done. I am just in awe of him. I'm in awe of how he presents himself, how he represents the club. He just carries himself with so much elegance and class and knowledge. He doesn't kick off in press conferences. He doesn't have those ridiculous little like catty sound bites like, you know, the likes of like Klopp would have or Ten Hag would have. Like he is just such a huge custodian of our club and someone that we could have only dreamed of in the past. Like, he just represents us fantastically, and I really do hope that he is the one to lead us to our first kind of silverware in the next few years, and I do think that he could. He's proved he can, rock with the big boys now with the limited, if you would, experience that he had prior to this at this level. So I think he absolutely deserves a chance to take us all the way, and I really do hope that he does that.
I think you make a good point there. He is such a good custodian. I think if you didn't know much about Eddie Howe, you would think he was a Geordie. He's bought into the club and the ethos of it. You wouldn't think that he was from the South Coast. Kendall, you made a very, very good point there about Emery. A lot of experience at a much higher level. Eddie Howe did fantastic last season, but it was his first real crack at taking a team to the top four and to a cup final. Sam, for you, he's obviously got a lot of credit in the bank. Do you think that as Newcastle United continue to grow and grow and grow, and they become hopefully a regular team in the Champions League, do you think the need to get a big experienced managerial name, someone like Poch or Klopp or Mourinho, do you think that lessens and how can become that? Or do you think the owners will one day think, okay, we need a big name here to take them to the next level?
Not in the short term, no. Although my one sort of fear, I suppose, is that there might be a weight of expectation now this season for the first time in 20 odd years. So that's, say, if we've got a tough start to the season, then we've got the Champions League to manage alongside, Carabao Cup. We want a good run in that again, don't we? So if we're sort of 10th, 11th in the Premier League come November, December, then will the pressure start to mount up on Howe? I hope not, because as you say, he's got a lot of credit in the bank, and I'm fully behind him 100%. Despite I was Unai Emery as well, but when Bruce was finally sacked, what I like about Howe the most is, because a lot of fans we want passionate managers. Just got to show passion this, passion that. I like someone more calculated, more measured, but who can show passion and that kind of energy at the right time, like Howe did at the end of the season, when the job was done, not when you've drawn 1-1 at home to West Brom because you've equalised in the last minute. Hooray! That's just a waste of time, and you look a bit silly. So that's what I like about Howe the most, and like bringing a name like Mourinho in. Okay, it'll be romantic because of the relationship he had with Sir Bobby, but his best managerial days are behind now, aren't they? Really, and the way he's turning into quite a lot of these old managers do, that turn very bitter, and his treatment of referees like Anthony Taylor not so long ago is absolutely disgusting. So I hope we show the faith and keep with Eddie Howe. And to be honest, whatever happens next season, if we can consolidate European football, not Champions League, just European football in general, that would be huge.
Yeah, 100%. I think what I like about Eddie Howe is he's always looking to improve. This isn't finishing in the top four and getting to a cup final. I think his mantra is, well, we haven't won anything. There's always a next level to go to, and that's kind of ingrained in the players as well. That you're only as good as your last victory, you're only as good as your last goal, and that also leads into who they're going to end up buying in the transfer market. That kind of attitude has to shine through in any new arrivals, and it's not about him either. Every time he's been nominated for Manager of the Month and won it, or nominated for Manager of the Season, it's about it's we, isn't it? It's collective. It's never all about him. Whereas certain managers, previous Newcastle United managers, it was all about them. And it's funny you should mention not getting overheated in the moment. I was thinking about Alan Pardew for Crystal Palace when in the FA Cup final when he did his little dance. Yeah, Kendall knows what I'm talking about. It comes back to bite you, doesn't it? And I think we saw in the moments after the Leicester game, and Eddie Howe going over to the corner of the Leazers and the East Stand and really enjoying that moment, fist pumping, which is not something we'd seen all season. It just was like a big relief, wasn't it?
Yeah, we see it so rarely, and I mean sometimes Newcastle United this season have scored so many fantastic goals, and looking at Eddie Howe, you would not know it because he just remains so cool. And even after those big celebrations after Leicester and when he's fist pumping the Gallagher, he comes into the press conference with us after and he's just the coolest man there. He just does not want to give anything away. And I just think the pressure just doesn't get to him.
Do you know the talk about bigger names coming in, like we've seen at other clubs, like it was Mark Hughes and then I can't remember who was after Mancini, and obviously the work with Pep. I think that pressure on Eddie Howe will just work to motivate him. And I'm not saying that pressure is actually there. It's there from outside sources, isn't it? I don't think it's there from the fan base or the ownership, but I think it will motivate him. And I think he'll be here for a long time to come. Even if next season doesn't quite go to plan, I think there'll be, I don't think people will be calling for him to go unless it goes really, really drastically wrong, but I can't see that happening. On the topic, Sam, of Champions League, who would your ideal opposition be if you could lock one in? We had Pete saying PSG. Who would you like?
Dortmund. War flags versus yellow wall.
Kendall, who's your pick?
I think everyone probably knows mine, Atletico Madrid. That's who I want. I had said for a number of years now, like, because everyone used to ask me, you follow two clubs. I'm like, well, I don't. I support one club and I've just followed another one for a player, Fernando Torres, who I've got pictures of here. So you just kind of and then you start kind of falling in love with the club. And they always said, what would you do if they played each other? And I was like, well, I want Newcastle to win because that's my club, but don't worry because that'll never happen. Here we are, both in the Champions League, literally a year after I've said that. So, that'll be my absolute dream. I would absolutely love Simeone to come to St James's Park. It would be, a little bit of a mishmash of dreams come true for me there, I think.
It'd be the clash, and excuse my French, of the shit houses, wouldn't it?
Took the words out of your mouth now, just not to say
Family show. You've stopped me from swearing on here before.
We'll put this out after the watershed. I mean, Adam, you've obviously been to a lot, if not all of the away games in the past season. What's the one Champions League away day you want to do in the next couple of months?
Well, I think a bit of a boring comment, to be honest, but I will back Real Madrid. That's the one. I want the best of the best, to be honest. Newcastle, I know, looking at us now, I'm probably confident we can get back to the Champions League soon, but let's assume this is the one time we get back. I want the best of the best of the best to be playing us. So the likes of Real Madrid, considering they're pot 2 as well, not even pot 1, they're pot 2. I think it's a crazy team to get. I will say, though, I kind of want new teams. I know it's been 2003 last time we were in there, but I don't want the likes of Inter Milan, Barcelona, the teams that already played before. I want to see fresh opposition, new grounds to go to. The likes of Ajax, I think it'll be a really good one. There's so many to pick from, but I have backed Real Madrid. I would have said PSG if Messi was still there because I really want to see him play.
Yeah, of course, Messi and James would have been something else, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm backing you. That Real Madrid for me would be the one.
Yeah, the Bernabeu would just be the pinnacle.
I think just see them at St James's Park as well. Another light would be it'd be special. I think if you get a big team as well, like a really big team, it's very likely Newcastle will do. It'll be one of those moments like the Spurs game, the first game after the takeover happened, when you had that kind of feeling of real emotion, because again, it's another moment where you go, wow, Newcastle United have actually done this. And it has been a really emotional kind of 18 months, hasn't it?
Oh, certainly. And I probably shouldn't admit this, but I'm going to put it out there. And I went to Sam Fender gig the other week and I did nearly shed a tear when the Champions League anthem came on. So I honestly do not know what I'm going to do in September when I'm at St James's Park and it starts playing, because it's just, as you say, that Spurs game was very emotional, the first game of the takeover, and I think it's going to be a not many dry eyes.
Nearly shed a tear.
Well, yeah, there was maybe one or two tears.
I was going to say that's reduced from the last time we told that story. Kendall, then we've come with the final question, and it is a really important question because it incorporates everything we've kind of spoken about so far, and it's where do you think Newcastle United will finish next season? But I'm going to ask it in two parts: where you think they will finish and where you would like them to finish, because I think they're obviously two very different things.
Yeah. And
it's going to be really interesting to get a feel for what the expectations of fans are.
I'm going to be honest. If we don't finish Champions League spots next season, I'm going to be like, that doesn't bother me at all. As long as we probably finish top 7, I think the pressure's different on us this year because we have got Champions League for the first time in so long. And as I said earlier, it's a lot of intense games, a lot of physical games, a lot of travelling. We've still got Premier League to play in that time, Carabao Cup, FA Cup. So there's just a lot more pressure physically on us, not expectations-wise, but physically on the team and on us as a club. So I think just to at least maintain European status next year would be massive, because it would just show it would be progression. Obviously, I would love us to get Champions League again. That would be fantastic. But I'm really not too bothered even if we end up with Conference League. I'm still happy with that. As I say, as long as we maintain European football next year, then I am more than over the moon, because to get 2 years of European football out of Newcastle United at this stage, considering where we've been the last 15, 16 years, and it's 20 years since we got Champions League, so that would be, massive for me. So I would like to finish top 4, but top 7 I am over the moon with.
Is there a third element in all of this as well, Sam? The fact that, where we'd like Newcastle to finish, where we think they will finish, but also the expectation of the owners. Now, we can say as fans, if they finish 7th or 8th, we won't kick off at that, because we've had the experience of the Champions League, and we've also hoped to have another cup run. But what will the owners be thinking if Newcastle do finish outside of the Champions League next season?
It depends on how much they invest during that time, this summer and in January as well, where we are in January when it comes to going in again in the transfer market. I don't think they've got ideas above their station just yet, to be honest. So I don't think they'll do anything rash. I think they're very realistic in their ambitions, because it's very much a long-term plan of which we're streaks ahead of where we should be. So again, as Kendall said, I would agree completely that top 7 is hunky dory for me. That's absolutely fine, with the old asterisks of with a cup run. Whether or not what happens in the Champions League, do we then go in the Europa after the group stage? Who knows? Or do we have another Wembley day out or whatever for the FA Cup or Carabao Cup? It'd be nice to make it past the 3rd round of the FA Cup. That's been a while. But top 7 for me, and I'll be more than happy.
Yeah, I think that will probably be the consensus, I think, among quite a lot of fans, as long as they can try and keep, in and around the top 6. And I think, Adam, when Newcastle had a small blip after the Carabao Cup and maybe the top 4 wasn't looking nailed on, a lot of people made quite a good argument that actually Newcastle United playing in the Europa League or even the Europa Conference League would give them a huge chance of winning it. So it isn't all about finishing the Champions League, is it?
Yeah, I do agree with that, actually. I mean, even my mindset going at the Champions League this season, I wouldn't be fussed finishing 3rd in the group stage if we meant we were to give the Europa League a real good opportunity for. Now, I know the likes of Liverpool now won't be easy, and I think especially nowadays in the Europa League, all of a sudden the likes of Barcelona, you've seen it last season, these teams are now getting in the Europa League, so I think it's a case that it will be hard. But I would actually fancy us. I think my focus this season, honestly, would just be in the Cups and the Champions League, just to see if we can potentially go and try and win something. I know with the extra games now and the fact that Newcastle have finished in the top 4, I think expectations will be a bit high going this season, which I think would be harsh on the likes of Eddie Howe and his players, because, I mean, this season showed the likes of Liverpool, Chelsea have a much better year, which will make getting top 4 again harder. And I think for Newcastle, just as long as we, even if it's just top 8, I know you would miss European football at that point, but just as long as we look like we're actually getting in there, even if it's a little bit disappointing at the end, obviously for me, I would want top 7 just to get any form of European football going into next season. But even if it's a case where you finish just slightly low, but all of a sudden Newcastle actually got to another cup final and Newcastle gave the Cups a good go, I would be happy with that. I think it's just one of them ones now where, again, everything's happened so quickly. Newcastle weren't meant to be here this early, but we are now, so we've got to adapt to it. And I think for us, I mean, long term, obviously, the ownership will want to win silverware. They will want to do all this, but it's not something that's going to happen this season. It's just something that's going to gradually happen. Even if it was about 10 to 15 years, it'd be one of them ones where there'd be plenty of time to settle into it. We don't have to rush it at once. But for me, I agree with Sam and Kendall. Top 7 would be great. And for me, I think we should have a bit of a focus as well in the cup competitions and see if we can actually try and win something.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will agree with that, and I think it's going to be an exciting season whatever happens. Just the fact that we can talk about Champions League football and start planning when the draw is and what comes after that is just, it still baffles me to actually think it is a reality, but it is, thanks to Eddie Howe and the owners of Newcastle United. Well, that is the end of the Big Newcastle United Forum. Thank you very much to Adam, Sam and Kendall for joining us on the Everything is Black and White podcast. You guys listening or watching, we urge you guys to take part in the survey too. As I mentioned, the link to do so is in the description of the podcast or the YouTube description. From myself and Aaron, we'll see you very soon.